Welcome back. I'm Ian Masters, and this is Background Briefing, available 24/7 at backgroundbriefing.org. And joining us now, David Dayen, who is the executive editor of the American Prospect, the winner of the Ida and Studs Terkel Prize, and the author of Chain of Title: How Three Ordinary Americans Uncovered Wall Street's Great Foreclosure Fraud, and Fat Cat: The Steve Mnuchin Story. And his latest book is Monopolized: Life in the Age of Corporate Power. And he has an article in the American Prospect, May Build Back Better Never Be Spoken of Again. Welcome to Background Briefing, David Dayen.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining us. And the idea that Build Back Better should never be spoken again is not that we don't need it, that the environment doesn't need it desperately to transition away from fossil fuels in order to deal with global warming. We're way behind the curve in doing that in any case. And we've just seen the Biden go to Saudi Arabia and kiss the ring and come back empty-handed. And Mohammed bin Salman, the psychotic punk who is about to become king, is lecturing the world on how you can't have all these emissions policies affecting oil production. We just need to have more oil. So with MBS and with Joe Manchin on the same team, it's looking pretty bleak for the environment, is it not?
I mean, I would say so. Manchin delivered the hammer blow to any efforts from Congress to legislate in this arena when he said that he would not go along with any reconciliation bill that included measures tackling climate change. So that's kind of the ballgame. He tried to walk it back the next day, but as President Biden, I think, rightly stated, we got to move forward. We've essentially been waiting for Godot here for the last 18 months, whether or not Manchin is going to agree to something on climate. And I think it's at this point time to move on and hope that we can take some executive actions to in that arena, and then, but obviously Manchin isn't going to come through.
But didn't the White House notice all along, and this goes back to the very beginning of the first negotiations, Manchin is the chair of the Senate Energy Committee. He's received more money from fossil fuel companies than any other politician in Washington. His family owns a coal distribution company from which he pulls something like $1 million out of a year. So why would they have thought somehow that this guy would be on the side of transitioning away from coal and fossil fuels into a clean, renewable electric future, which is, of course, necessary?
Yeah. He doesn't seem like the most reliable negotiating partner, does he there, Ian? I mean, it was a force of circumstance. I mean, every Republican is opposed to doing anything on climate. And so you have 50 Democrats. And if you're going to pass anything, it's going to have to be done with a reconciliation bill by a party line vote. And so Manchin represents vote number 50 that you must have. So I think I tend to agree with you that it was a hope against hope kind of situation. But there was no other legislative alternative here. And I think what we've seen is that Manchin was really not interested in doing it from the get-go, but he was sort of stringing it along so that he wouldn't have to take the full brunt of the criticism. And now here we are, and we're kind of out of time.
So they went back to the same bitter well, but which is pretty puzzling. But the focus, of course, of the ire, particularly of Democrats, is on Manchin and also on Sinema. Shouldn't the focus also be on the Republicans?
Well, sure. I mean, as I mentioned, Republicans certainly aren't going to come to the table on this kind of bill. If you want to go even back further, the fact that Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema were put in the position to be able to block this agenda is a function of Democrats not doing better in various elections in states where Biden won, places like Maine, which was unable to defeat Susan Collins, North Carolina was a close race at the presidential level, but the governor is a Democrat and won in 2020, but Democrats ran a pretty bad candidate who got caught up in a sexting scandal. So if there were two other seats out there, then we wouldn't be talking about Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema so much. Instead, we have this 50-50 Senate the way it is. Republicans obviously are the main impediment here to doing anything under regular order, and that's why this reconciliation, which only requires a party line vote, has been brought into play. Once again, because Manchin and Sinema won't eliminate the filibuster and just make it a situation where you can just pass things by a majority. What a novel concept. The entire 2 years here of Biden trying and failing to get his agenda passed is a function of structural factors, political failures, and really a lack of focus on the kind of governing that needs to be done to show people that you're behind them. The fact that the Trump tax cuts, which are historically unpopular for a tax cut, to have negative perception among the public is unprecedented. Every single Democrat, including Joe Manchin, including Kyrsten Sinema, voted against it in 2017. And the fact that you can't actually pass anything dealing with the Trump tax cuts only 5 years later, when they were unpopular, are tilted completely toward the rich, and would satisfy any kind of situation from people like Manchin that say, we have to pay for whatever spending that we're going to do. It speaks to a real broken nature of the way in which Democrats govern.
And of course, Senator Kyrsten Sinema, she's actually even more adamant against raising taxes on corporations and wealthy individuals than even Manchin. So,
well, yes, but it's not just the Senate; it's the House. I mean, there are a number of House centrists, people like Josh Gottheimer and Kurt Schrader, who actually lost his primary largely because of trying to disassociate himself with mainstream Democrats, who have also in the past week and maybe triggered Manchin to finally pull the plug, said that they didn't want to see any tax increases. So these are also people who voted against the Trump tax cuts and are now reversing themselves. And you can talk about the power of big money, the fact that the wealthy and the well-connected have just much more purchase in Washington than anybody else, and or whatever other reason you can come up with. The fact is that even in the Obama administration, tax cuts on the tax increases on the wealthy were put forward in the Affordable Care Act, for example. In the Clinton's first budget, for all you want to say about Bill Clinton, he was able to increase taxes on the wealthy in his first budget. We Democrats can't do now even that bare minimum that was done in the Obama and Clinton administrations. It really says something, and there should be a lot of soul searching from that.
So now that Manchin has killed the possibility of dealing with climate change and getting some kind of tax fairness so that the wealthy who have gotten so much richer, the billionaires, during these COVID years than before, it's just that the statistics are just so clear of income inequality. It's just shocking. So what we are now left with is the best that they can do is do something about drug prices, price negotiation through Medicare. But even if they do that, according to your article, David Dayen, it doesn't kick in until 2026, 2 years after the next presidential elections, and a 2-year extension of the Affordable Care Act subsidies that were set to expire at the end of this year. So that's what 18 months of fruitless negotiations have brought us, right?
Yeah, and we should do it. I mean, and I suspect that Congress will do it. And, it says something about how much money there is in the pharmaceutical system that you could put together a very modest bill that doesn't even kick in until 2026, that only involves negotiation on 10 drugs that year. It extends to 20 after 2029. And you can still get $300 billion of savings for the federal government out of that, in addition to hundreds of billions of dollars in savings for ordinary people. So that's, however modest, that is an advance. And then the subsidies, which were in the American Rescue Plan that Biden passed very early in his term, were going to expire at the end of this year. And if they are not renewed, people will start getting notices, who are people in the insurance exchanges under the Affordable Care Act. They would get notices in October, right before the election, saying your insurance premiums are going up 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%. So it's important to do that as well. Those subsidies, increased subsidies, ensure that nobody pays more than, I think it's 9.5% of their income on health insurance. And so, it's worthwhile. It should be done. I think it will be done, but it's certainly not the ambitions that President Biden and the Democrats had going in.
So then, David Dayen, in the last few minutes, I mean, obviously, it's an appalling situation where you have a situation where the plutocracy owns the Republican Party outright, and they are absolutely adamantly against just about anything except giving tax breaks to the super rich and protecting billionaires and millionaires, and that's pretty clear. And then the Democrats, all you have to do, Wall Street and these other powerful interests, all they have to do is peel off 2 Democrats and they can block any kind of reform, which is what we've witnessed here. And of course, just the other day, Manchin put the last nail in the coffin. But my understanding is from other reporting is that the White House did not exactly handle this well first time around. And is it true from your reporting, David, that they could have got a deal with Manchin and Sinema, but somehow the White House blew it or irritated him? What do you know about that?
Well, I think, and I'm going to be doing a lot more reporting on this, but what I think is this. No faction of the party is blameless here. I mean, obviously, you have centrists and the Manchin-Sinema axis who did a lot of damage. The Biden administration, I don't think, did the kind of negotiation that would have led to being successful. There wasn't any priority setting at the very beginning here to say, instead of dragging this out over 18 months, you could have started in January of 2021 when Biden was inaugurated and said, all right, what is it that we want here? What are you willing to do, Joe Manchin? What are you willing to do, Kyrsten Sinema? Let's get it done and get it out the door. And that would have been a far preferable option than this stringing along, which was, arguably more harmful politically. The fact is that over the last 18 months, the Democrat that you hear the most from, that is most on television, that is most symbolic of where the Democrats are right now, if you're just on the surface level, just are paying attention, is Joe Manchin. I mean, he's the one that you hear about. What will Joe Manchin do? What is he going to want? What is he allowing? And it's debilitating for other Democrats to have to go through this. So I don't think anyone takes full blame for this, but I don't think anyone can be rid of blame for this on all sides. Progressives too was the ask here at the outset of a very sweeping set of reforms too much, and ended up making it hard to narrow down because everybody had a stake in doing one piece or another of the main bill. So I think there are a lot of things, a lot of reckoning that has to go on in the entire party about how they're putting together policy, how they're setting agendas, and what they need to do moving forward.
And something would have been better than nothing. So I thank you for joining us here today, David Dayen.
All right, thank you.
And again, I've been speaking with David Dayen, who is the executive editor of the American Prospect and the winner of the Ida and Studs Terkel Prize, and the author of Chain of Title, How Three Ordinary Americans Uncovered Wall Street's Great Foreclosure Fraud, and Fat Cat, the Steve Mnuchin Story. And his latest book is Monopolized, Life in the Age of Corporate Power. And he has an article at the American Prospect, May Build Back Better Never Be Spoken of Again. We're going to take a brief station break. We're back looking into why the Justice Department is sitting on its hands prosecuting low-level insurrections instead of those who planned and led